everyone, welcome back to A Little More Inspired. My name is Blanca. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to check out my website, alittle.moreinspired.com, so that you can explore all of my content. And please be sure to hit the follow and subscribe button so that you never miss any of my new episodes. And if you like this episode, please be sure to like it so that I know that I'm doing a good job. And I'm very excited to continue my series on the interior castle. I am still on Mansion 1. I feel like there's just so much information for Mansion 1. I feel like that's where most of us are, in our journey through our humanity. In episodes 1 and 2, I really dived into what is the interior castle, an introduction to the soul, having curiosity of something deeper than ourselves. So in this episode, I will be going through what the individual will experience as they enter the castle, and St. Teresa of Avila gives a lot of really good practical advice that we can just take on in our everyday life. Found it really relatable because that's where we're at sometimes. This is where we all will start. That's where a lot of people kind of stay. So the mansions that are more further in, I'm sure I will have less examples because I don't know if I necessarily relate to them. Hope that you enjoy this episode and that you leave feeling a little more inspired. So let's get into it. So first we're going to talk about Mansion 1 and the two states that you can find yourself in, or what the individual in this position will experience. Souls newly entering the castle are entering with a desire for God, but are still deeply distracted. That's really what Mansion 1 is about having a desire to know God, but feeling really pulled towards the world and like the distractions of everyday life, because at this point in our life we're just so immersed what we have been conditioned to want. It's really hard to stay consistent with the desire for a more spiritual life. I don't even think that we're doing it consciously here, or that we even know that this is really happening, that there's something keeping us from fully putting our attention on our spiritual life, because it just feels so normal to be doing the things that we do. And souls who have been there a while but are living in mortal sin, spiritually eclipsed. So sometimes we'll already have an understanding of a spiritual life. We are total believers and understand that there is a God, but we are choosing to live lives that aren't necessarily aligned with our values. So this is what St. Teresa calls a person who is spiritually eclipsed, somebody who knows the right thing to do. Maybe they had a really good spiritual upbringing, but have decided to live not aligned with their true core values. So just to get a little bit more understanding of what the structure of the castle is, or the structure of the diamond, don't think of getting to the center of the diamond as this like straight line that you're just kind of progressively walking through. St. Teresa describes the diamond as having multiple mansions, and they're all kind of out of order, and you're kind of moving in all different directions depending on like the spiritual path that you're in. There isn't like a one straight route to get to the center. Your path is going to be different on how to get to the center. That the goal really is to direct your attention to the main room, which is where God dwells in deeper union with God. St. Teresa compares getting to the center as a palm heart. You are peeling the layers to reach the center. The journey inward requires shedding layers. That means that we're shedding attachments that are gradually peeled away. It is gradual to become aware of the things that need to change. It would be really nice to think, oh, I started my healing journey, I want to be close to God, and all of a sudden I'm like this saintly person that never does anything wrong. Only God can truly change your heart. There's like a progression in your growth. You can't handle everything all at once. Capacity of the soul. The soul is going to always exceed your comprehension. The soul is so vast. That's why you shouldn't overwhelm yourself that you have to get to a certain place. I think normal people, you are doing the best that you can, and you're working on yourself, and you're allowing God to dwell within you and to change you. Think of God as the inner sun. He is illuminating everything. He brings light to what you cannot see on your own. St. Teresa also talks about not lingering in one mansion, not even the one of self-knowledge. She says that self-knowledge is necessary, becoming self-aware, really looking at yourself honestly. But She says that there can be some obstacles with individuals obsessing over analyzing themselves and like not actually progress. You also need movement, action, contemplation, and focus on God. So, what does that mean? You need to be living your life. You can't get stuck in just the reading and then the self reflecting and not putting what you're learning into action. You do need isolation and you do need time to contemplate and to be with yourself to really think about things. But I think that I've struggled with this a little bit is that I'm scared to be connected to people because I don't want to experience certain things. But that's really where you're going to be applying the things that you're learning and really putting into action the way that the Holy Spirit is really working through you. And sometimes those tests that come up are difficult, but that's really the only way that you can truly grow. And you're going to have triggers and things that test you, but you shouldn't avoid living life just because you don't want to feel uncomfortable. You want to be in contemplation, focus on God. You are also giving yourself moments to sit in praising Him and loving Him and just spending time with Him. The ways that I do that is I feel like my biggest change has been through adoration. I've mentioned adoration a lot. That's really where true intimacy for me exists, is me going to adoration and spending time with him. And then as you notice how you feel there, it's like a desire, an insatiable desire to go. I can spend hours there. That's where you're really getting your cup filled through him, at least for me. I also am obviously Catholic. I have a little altar for myself where I sit and pray, and I have pictures that remind me of my faith. And I love like the current altar that I have in my room. It just feels like a private little space for me that I can really focus and pray and like meditate. And as soon as I wake up, it's like the first thing that I look at, and it just makes me feel, comforted. So I really like making altars. I actually made one for my niece where I like made a little spot for her in her room. And I think that you can really make your faith something that is personal to you and things that create that fire within you. When I was younger, I never had an altar, and my grandmother did, and my mom has an altar as well, like in the living room. And so anybody who comes into our house, you're going to see our altar. It just creates that safe little space and that safe little nook for you to really connect. So yeah, so Saint Teresa warns us about over introspection. If you stay too long dissecting yourself, you risk getting stuck in introspection. So what she means by getting stuck is that sometimes we are so overly analyzing ourselves that we feel overwhelmed with like, I'm never going to be good enough, so why even try? It's good to become self-aware. I feel like most people, if you are really searching for self-awareness and you're self-examining yourself, honestly, congratulations, because most people never even get that far. What is self-examination? You are really looking at yourself, you're actively thinking, analyzing, and evaluating yourself. Where am I spiritually? You're thinking about where you stand in the spectrum of closeness to God. And you are looking at your patterns, you're looking at your sins, and you're looking at your attachments. You're looking at the things that are burdening you, or you're looking at the things that you need to grow in, or you're looking at the things that maybe you've made too important. And you're also looking at your reactions. You're looking at, why do I react that way? Why do I think that way? All of these are great questions and great things to sit and contemplate in because it's intentional, mental, and active. You're using your mind to understand yourself. This is necessary because it builds self awareness. And to become self aware, you need to cultivate honesty with yourself. It is really hard for people to be genuinely honest with themselves. It is really hard because I think most of us want to be good people. Such a fearful feeling to admit when we're wrong or to admit that we aren't perfect. And a lot of people avoid the feeling and so they never self examine. St. Teresa says that too much of a good thing then becomes bad. So, too much self focus becomes a distraction. We can become distracted with ourselves. Self knowledge without contemplation becomes another form of self absorption. You are really stuck on your own problems and your own misfortunes. So, with anything, it's all about finding the balance. You want healthy movement to look inward and then upward. This is turning away from yourself and towards God, is less analyzing and more just being. It's resting in God's presence. It's letting Him reveal rather than you always trying to figure everything out. You have to give that space for God to really work His magic and to put things together. You're doing your best, but you're also letting God do His work. This part, it's receptive. You are allowing yourself to receive, and it's not so much analytical. This is where transformation actually deepens. How they work together, this is key. It's not either or, it's order and balance. It's examination brings awareness to yourself. Then you move towards contemplation, which brings actual transformation. I can honestly say that I've been on a healing journey for the last 8 years. For the first 5 years of that experience, I was in a new city, I was young, and I was distracted with my life. And I know that I'd always believed in God, and I know I had had a very spiritual experience that had made me aware of all the things that I needed to change. But I was searching. But I definitely understood that I had like a lot of traumas and a lot of things in my arrested development that I needed to mature in. And so for a long time, I feel like I was really focused on the psychology of my mind, emotional intelligence. But I think that I really wasn't leaving a lot of time for contemplation, and sometimes would find myself, why am I doing all of this for? Or understanding things in concept. But I think now that I've really fallen into those deeper practices through some of the rock bottoms that I've had that have forced me to really see how important contemplation is. I really feel like the changes that I have been really wanting, that's something that only God can really solidify, is what I'm trying to say. Think of it like examination equals cleaning the window, right? You're cleaning the fogs of your glasses. You are making yourself see clearly. But through contemplation, you're letting the light come in. You're letting God solidify the things that you're learning and to really allow it to transmute through you and to really create that genuine change. So here, humility is the key to creating this lasting change. Humility must always be working like the bee making honey. You never outgrow humility. No matter how deep you go, you'll never reach the end of true humility. Humility is like a never ending pit, it's infinite. And pride will always ruin your progress. And pride is always trying to sneak its way into your life and into your way of thinking. Humility keeps your soul healthy. When you're truly contemplating and you're truly seeing how God is really working through you, it reminds you of how you can't do it without Him. Your self-knowledge needs to be with direction. Self-knowledge is essential, but only if it has direction. This is not to say that it is unimportant. Even if someone is advanced in prayer, they should never abandon humility or self-knowledge. That's why like there's that stereotype of religious people who are always at church and it's like this performative thing. They kind of make religion look bad essentially because they're not cultivating humility. They think that they're holier than thou just because they go to church, or they think that just believing in Jesus is going to save them. If you are not practicing self-awareness and humility, then you start to be like the people that you criticize, that you think are living sinfully. Remember that all of this has to work together. We can only truly know ourselves by attempting to know God. If you don't know how, I think that you can pray for that. Like if you don't know how to get to know God. I really didn't start to know God truly until my grandmother passed away and my mom took me to the basilica and bought me a Bible and a rosary. And when I went back to my life in California as a way to grieve my grandmother and to connect to her, I started to pray the rosary. I mean, I'd prayed the rosary my whole life in groups and in family settings and prayer groups that my mom used to go to, but I had never prayed it alone. I started to like how it made me feel and feel like a craving for it. But if you don't know, you can ask God, like, I want to know who you are. I want to have a relationship with you. but I don't even know where to start. Or maybe you can just say, like, I don't know if I want to know, but I would like to want to get to know you. And if you mean that with the deepest part of your heart, if you mean it sincerely, he's going to start moving the wheels in your life, and you're going to find yourself in situations that you never thought you'd be in. True self knowledge does not come from staring at all your flaws and thinking about how much of a horrible person you are or all the things that need to change. It's not about analyzing every weakness endlessly. It comes from looking at God. His greatness reveals our smallness. His self knowledge is not self obsession. So, what is distorted self knowledge? This is when we are paralyzed. Distorted self knowledge creates a paralysis inside of us. You start thinking, I wonder if people are noticing me. You're worried too much about how people are seeing you. Oh, I'm not good enough because people are going to think this and that of me. That's like one thing that you need to start living for. This whole world teaches you to live for the opinions of other people. When you'll become free is when you no longer care about what people think of you. You have to start looking at things from, what does God think of me? What do I genuinely think of me? You don't like the things that you've done. You want to change because you want to be a better person, not because you want so and so to think you're so great, or because you want so and so to like you, or you want to be a part of this group. No, you're doing things from looking at yourself genuinely and looking at, would God be proud of the person that I am? Am I proud of the person that I am? I have found that the more free I've become is in correlation with how much I don't care what other people think of me. That doesn't mean that I don't care about being a good person or in living in community or being at peace with others. It just means that I don't really care if people think that my life is good or if people think that I'm a good person. Most of the time, people think that bad people are good people, and they'll think that good people are bad people, depending on wherever part their psyche is in or whatever they are pedestalizing in their mind. Most of the times, people aren't even seeing you clearly. So get that out of your head about what people are thinking. So, another thing is, am I qualified? Distorted self knowledge asks that, am I good enough? Will this turn out badly? Overthinking the unknown, because when you're heading towards a life that's different than the one that you have lived before, there can be a lot of doubt of, what if this isn't a good idea? Should I even begin? Is this something I should even start? Is it even worth it? Because it can be really hard to even think of living a life different from the one that you have lived. St. Teresa is describing this paralysis of self awareness. This is not humility. This is distorted self knowledge. You think that you're being humble, but you're not. Many people assume that their fearful thoughts come from humility, but they don't. A lot of those things are like planted thoughts from our own egos or our own insecurities or things that want to keep us small. They come from not understanding our nature. It's not redirecting our thoughts to God, and it's remaining fixated on ourselves. Sometimes you think you're being humble because you're like, I'm not going to apply for that because I wouldn't be good at that. And maybe you wouldn't be good at that. But if God has opened that door, He will make you good at whatever it is that you are diving into. He makes people into people they're not. So that's what true humility is knowing that maybe I wouldn't have the capacity to do that, but my trust in God and trust in His direction will help me rise to the occasion. So true humility does not make you timid. It does not make you a coward. It does not make you self-doubting, and it does not fear. True humility makes you depend on God's strength. You have confidence that even if you're not actually capable, He will help you rise to the occasion. It makes you aware of your weaknesses, but bold, because He is the source of your actions. One day you'll look and you'll be like, oh my God, I don't know how I got here. When you're walking the path with God, He will transform you into somebody that you didn't even think that you could become. And not that we're looking for God to like be great. That's not what I'm saying either. New age spirituality, you see a lot of that. Manifesting your dreams. You have all these expectations of becoming this amazing person. It's that You are accepting whatever God wants for you. And when things are presented to you, and He will help you rise to the occasion. But it's not because we're searching to be grand. There's a lot of freedom in realizing that you're not that extraordinary, that that isn't a bad thing. You know, that there's like a path for you that aligns with what God wants for you. Fix your gaze on Christ. When we look at Him, our minds are elevated. Our self knowledge becomes balanced. We are not rendered lowly or cowardly. Humility that leads to paralysis is not from God. Humility that leads to trust is from God. That is what it means to be truly humble and to truly depend on God. So if you're not Catholic, there is a lot of devil talk in a lot of these spiritual books. We believe that we are constantly fighting a force that is trying to keep us away from union with God. So in this series, I will be referencing the devil and demons, and these are forces that are trying to keep us away from becoming who God wants us to be. Here are some of the tricks that the devil plays on our mind. I think that sometimes we think of the devil as this little red creature that hovers around us and makes us do these really terrible things. The devil really is, he's very persuasive in the ways that he does things, and he really tries to distort our thinking. So he wants to slowly but surely move you away from your focus on God. And so he might distort things, and he might make you not see things clearly because he has a way of like tricking us. He uses strategies to confuse us and keep us from making progress. Distortion of self-knowledge. That's really one of the ways that he tries to keep us away from God in this mansion. He prevents people from recognizing their weaknesses properly, creating distrust in self-knowledge. A lot of people being really afraid of really looking at themselves, searching for clarity of how they create their own problems in their life. People are so filled with pride, they think that they're too good, or worse, they think that they know everything. Those are ways that the devil tries to keep us from growing, not seeing ourselves clearly, and avoidance of doing the inner work. And so they're like, well, this is just how I am. Take it or leave it. And you just gotta leave it. You gotta leave them there if they're not people who want to genuinely grow. In Mansion 1 is not just about obvious sin. Spiritual warfare doesn't come just from obvious things. It can look like the discouragement that we feel from actually going inward or seeking a relationship with God. It's the constant comparison to others, always comparing yourself to what other people are doing or what other people aren't doing. It's that shyness that we feel going to church. I don't want to go because I don't want people to look at me like nobody's looking at you. That self preoccupation, that self absorption, fear of taking action. Within every mansion, there are many rooms, and the first mansion is not simple. It is not a simple place to be, you know, because this is the beginning. This is the hardest part, is change. So a person may be entering prayer sincerely. Maybe you've gone through something. As we learned in the last episode, St. Teresa says that a lot of the ways that people kind of stumble into Mansion 1 is through rock bottoms. And you're starting to search for answers, genuine, sincere call for help. Here, you're really struggling with fear, with insecurity, and vulnerability. This is where the person is entering with all the baggage, all of your insecurities of your childhood, of your family, of who you've been, what you feel you're incapable of being, all of the stories that you've inherited about yourself and about others. And you are very vulnerable here. This is when the devil is really working the hardest, basically, because he doesn't want you to have conviction in your desire to move inward. Entering this mansion is already God's grace. You have to realize that all of this change and all of these desires to think differently, to be searching, that is God already working his magic in you, his light beaming in you. He is trying really hard to make you see a new path. So, why are beginners easily deceived here? Souls in this mansion are still heavily engrossed in the outer world. They have a constant desire for pleasure, honors, distinction, and validation from people. The spiritual foundation here is still weak and fragile. When I first started my healing journey, I'll never forget. I was talking to this lady and crying, and I felt like anything that anyone told me or like the opinions of people just felt so heavy. And I really cared about what other people thought about me. The lady who was listening to me was like, you're really spiritually weak. I think that your time here in San Diego is really going to be about you becoming spiritually strong. And at this place, even if you've had that desire, even if you've had a moment of clarity, you are still very fragile in the ways that people can just break your self esteem. You're handing it to everybody. It is not something that is innate to you yet. As you progress spiritually, you'll notice that your self worth starts to become more solid because it's no longer coming from the outside world, but it's something that is growing deeply locked in with something that no one can take from you. So even when they do not intend to hurt the relationship with God, they are easily pulled into worldly distractions. I don't regret the life that I lived in my 20s. Like, I was young and I was very a naive person, and I needed to go explore my life and I needed to go see what the world was about, and I also needed to get hurt. I know that that sounds crazy to say now. Those things really made me grow up, made me learn about the world and about people. Those things were always more important to me. Even though I wanted to grow spiritually, I had other things that were taking priority because you don't truly understand what it means yet. I had to suffer some of the things to really see how my priorities weren't really on correctly. In this position, you still rationalize your actions. You say, well, this isn't that bad. Well, everyone else is doing it. So you're inside the castle, but the view is still obstructed. Disentangling yourself from unnecessary noise. It is really crucial that in this position, as you're growing, that you begin to disentangle yourself from unnecessary worries and busyness as much as possible. That when you truly realize that you've been attached to a bunch of things that are unnecessary and actually causing a lot of chaos, that sometimes things have to crash and burn. Sometimes it happens naturally. So the people that you've related to, they don't want to be around you. You're changing, and I think that we take it personal. I took it really personal when my life seemingly seemed to crash and burn and everything seemed to disappear. Why is all of this happening to me? I thought that seeking God would make me, have more people in my life. You don't necessarily have the right people. And so everything begins to disappear. And in the moment, you might not see it as a blessing. But over time, once it's full circle, you'll realize that it was the best thing that could have happened to you. This is the moment of becoming aware of how distracted and spiritually confused we have been. How do we simplify our lives while still fulfilling our responsibilities? Beginning to look for spiritual balance and simplicity. A spiritually balanced life does not mean abandoning your life, quitting your job, or escaping responsibility. Like, how there's like this big trend moving to Bali, quitting your full-time job and you're going off to finding yourself. I think everybody's seen that movie, Eat, Pray, Love, when Julia Roberts realizes she doesn't want to be married anymore. Like, I do love that movie, I'm not gonna lie. But I used to relate to that story about wanting to drop everything and go live a new life and become a new person. In certain situations, those experiences are necessary, right? For us to go and live in a new place and to be surrounded by new people and open our minds to new experiences. And I did do that. But then eventually, my life began to create the chaos again. Now that I'm in a more mature spiritual place, I realize that living that balanced life that we are searching for is not about promoting escapism. Escaping the world isn't necessarily what I want anymore. Eventually, you have to come back. You have to come back to reality. You have to go back to work. You have responsibilities. Your parents are aging. Your life is happening. And eventually, there will be an emptiness that you still can't figure out because even if you've found a way to detach. I learned about the Buddhist teachings when I was searching, and I really liked the Buddhist teachings. I feel like I learned about detachment and about not being so self-absorbed in my own victimhood and becoming more rational. But I feel like there's a limit or like a cap that happens. And then there's like more that you're searching for. And it's really God and Christ that can fulfill that cap. I think that there's a way for you to fill your cup without actually escaping from your life duties, cutting the unnecessary noise in your life, like cutting off the things you don't need. And I think that's why that story about abandoning your life and abandoning your great job and abandoning your relationship, they do sound really great because I think it feels that way at first. Like I feel like when I moved to California and I was escaping all of my problems, and I think that I did need that for a little bit. Discover myself in a different way. But then eventually I had to come back to the reality, which was my home in DC. I'd been running away for so long. And I had to come face myself. And I still felt empty. The only thing that has truly fulfilled me in the ways that nothing else has is my relationship with God. Life isn't necessarily easy for me now. Life is lifing. I work to have a sick parent who I dedicate a lot of time taking care of, and my life isn't fabulous, but I find that I have this newfound strength and this newfound peace, and I don't feel like I'm incessantly searching anymore. And there isn't this feeling of, well, the next thing is going to make me happy and the next thing is going to make me happy. I feel like now I understand what it means to want what God wants for me. And if that means living my everyday life more simply, He's filling me in a way that I don't feel the need to incessantly search, then I finally am finding the freedom that I think I had left and gone searching for before. And it was here at home. Fill your cup in the right order so you do not live from emptiness. We feel empty because we are looking for other things externally to fill the cup that only God can fill. The world feeds off of unnecessary busyness and distraction. So, here are some signs of true spiritual growth in your life. How do you know you're actually moving in the right direction? You will find that your love for God and your neighbor begins to increase. This is how you know you're truly doing the true work, because you'll find yourself falling in love with your connection to God. There is a switch in you of like kind of the irritabilities that you've had with people. You'll find yourself being more patient, being more understanding, having more empathy, having more compassion. How you know you're truly growing in the right direction. You know, Christ calls us to love others. And I don't necessarily think that that's always easy, especially when people have hurt you. You'll find yourself forgiving things that you thought you wouldn't have been able to forgive. You'll start to find that you're becoming more sincere, more humble, and more loving. True spiritual growth is reflected in how you live and the way that you treat others. Only the Holy Spirit can truly begin to change you. Battles of the first mansion. In Catholicism, the entry point into the court is through baptism. We believe that through baptism, the original sin is removed, and then there is a awareness of God and our desire to be near Him. Our parents are supposed to cultivate that foundation, or the people that are raising us, our community. And through confirmation, it starts to prepare the soul for spiritual battle, having a knowledge of God. I don't necessarily think that we're always taught correctly, but I think that in right order, that is supposed to be strengthening the soul. Do I think that you have to be a Catholic with all of these things? I don't think so. That's just my opinion. You know, I don't limit God in what He can do to get people near Him. So I think that there probably are lots of people that aren't Catholic and don't have confirmation. I think that this is a place for souls who, in some way, already have access to God to some degree, but have not yet entered deeply inward. What does the enemy want here? He wants a performative spiritual Christian. The enemy wants Christians who are nice, who are passive, and who are performative and spiritually comfortable. Performative spirituality can look like surface level morality, wanting to appear good without the inner transformation, and avoiding self-examination, sacrifice, or change. The enemy here truly fears Christians who become true spiritual warriors, people who are passionate and sincere in their faith, people who can persevere. He wants people who are fake, who are pretending, who want to be seen as good, but not actually good. Like Glinda in Wicked. I feel like she's the perfect example of somebody who's performative nice. They want to be seen as kind. They want to be seen as good. And so they do things to impress others, to show how bright and light they are. But in reality, their heart isn't really good. Their heart is full of selfishness. They will always pick their own comfort over anything else. The enemy doesn't want people who pray constantly and persevere through hardship. Because that's what really the spiritual life I feel like has shown me is that I can get through anything that's difficult. I have a really sick parent. My mom has cancer. And I don't think that I would be able to get through the things that I'm getting through without God. Or even just some of the things that I've gone through in my life. If it wouldn't have been for God, like I think I would have become like already a really bitter and unhappy person. I've talked about my episodes of depression, and even though I'm going through those things that are difficult right now, seeing a parent that's really sick and seeing the deterioration of their health, I don't feel like my life is ending. I feel a desire to take care of my mom. I feel a desire to be near her, but I don't feel like I'm falling apart. And I know that that's not through my own strength. Whenever I'm feeling like I'm having a heavy day, or some of the things that I've gone through with like seeing my mom go through these really difficult medical experiences, or seeing her in a state that I've never seen her in. You know, some days are hard. Sometimes it obviously gets to you. You're a human being and you love your parent or anybody that you love and you don't want to see them suffering. I will go to adoration and I will hide under this little pillar thing and I will just go and I'll just cry to God and I'll tell him all of my fears that I fear, you know, not having her here when I'm going through certain milestones in my life. I fear the future without her. I fear missing her and I'll just weep. After I leave adoration the next day, I feel like I'm at peace with what's happening. And even if it's not what I want, my human heart doesn't want to see things progress in a certain direction. Like I know that God's going to give me the strength to accept the next things that happen in our life. So that's what the enemy doesn't want. He wants you to be depressed and he wants you to feel hopeless. That's what he wants. He wants you to feel like you don't have any hope. And I hope that nobody out there feels like they don't have any hope. If you are with God, you can't lose hope. And that you still have a life to live and you still have a life to experience. And He will give you the strength to keep going. Even in the things that you think there's no way I'll be able to get this through on my own. He fears those who overcome their mental and spiritual blocks, putting your self-esteem in the hands of other people. He wants you to be a slave to the world. God can help you through the journey of healing these obstacles. You just have to really want it, and you have to know that this mansion is really about one's own effort. Most importantly, He doesn't want people who inspire others to do the same. Because once someone truly knows God, they become light. I think that when you're truly moving in a direction that is sincere with God, the people around you will naturally be affected. You're going to cause growth in others. And that's what He doesn't want. He doesn't want you to influence others. And you influence people naturally by just being yourself. True transformation naturally influences and inspires people around them. So yeah, that's what the enemy doesn't want. He doesn't want you to have hope. He doesn't want you to see a future that has possibilities. He doesn't want you to influence others, and he wants you stuck. So I hope that if you're listening to this, you take anything from me is to be inspired and to keep growing and to keep searching and to never ever lose hope. So yeah, I think I'm gonna cut the episode here and then I'll go into how to persevere through the temptations that we face while we are choosing to grow. I hope that this episode made sense and that you feel a little bit more inspired. We'll talk about temptations and more into the enemy, because there really is just so much for us to learn. I feel like all of the advice that St. Teresa teaches us in Mansion 1 is just like good practical advice to take as just a human being. Yeah, thank you guys, and don't forget to like this episode if you enjoyed it, and hit the subscribe button so that you never miss any of my new episodes. And bye!